Meanwhile, tens of thousands have flocked to the streets of Tel Aviv and other cities throughout the occupied territories for a 24th straight week. They're protesting against the Israeli cabinet's extremist policies, including its controversial judicial overhaul plan. Benjamin Netanyahu's so-called reform plan will limit the powers of the Supreme Court and strike down politicians' decisions. It'll also give politicians greater powers over selecting judges. Back in March, Netanyahu agreed to temporarily postpone the overhaul following unprecedented protests and mass strikes. However, despite all the opposition and recent fall in the value of the regime's currency, he's indicated his will to push ahead with the plan. On Friday, Netanyahu's deputy, Yariv Levin, said he's determined more than ever to continue to do everything to pass the reform. Joining us now from San Francisco, California, for more on the story is Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer. Hello, Scott. It's been a while. Hope you're safe and doing well out there in Northern California. Now, Scott, when you see numbers like this coming out for this many weeks, 24 straight weeks, you have to ask yourself that there has to be something more to it than just this this judicial overhaul. What do you think is at stake here, and why people are so irate and pushing back against this extremist government?
Well, I think it is the people awakening to the totalitarian dictatorship and tyranny that Netanyahu represented in the past, what he represents now, and what he imposes on Israel in the future. The people have recognized Netanyahu as a scandalous, corrupt politician whose family has been criminally charged in the past. Netanyahu is consolidating his judicial power in this action. And the people, I think, have risen up against him for a variety of reasons, including crimes against humanity that Netanyahu has in fact committed against the Israeli people himself by forcing their vaccination with the COVID-19 vaccine that is coming out to have enormous physical consequences and deaths and blood clots and strokes and aneurysms and heart attacks. Netanyahu is responsible for becoming the Nazi Dr. Mengele and experimenting on the Israeli people. So they're recognizing that. They're recognizing his tyrannical moves to consolidate power. In the background, of course, they're also recognizing that the U.S.-Israeli military juggernaut, which has embarked on a 20-year crusade to conquer every regime in the Middle East and turn them into vassal states, has ultimately failed, and it's failed with the capstone of Ukraine. It's failed with the rising of a multipolar world where Russia, Iran, India, and China have replaced the U.S. and Israel as the main economic, political power brokers. And that's why 3/4 of the world are gravitating in the direction of BRICS. So I think Netanyahu is desperately trying to consolidate his power for dictatorial purposes in a very short amount of time. As the world changes, the U.S. and Israel is becoming split and broken apart. So I think Israel will also begin to abandon a lot of its prior designs, such as sending Zionists into Ukraine. That's ultimately failed as well.
And a lot of people see this as a corrupt apartheid system that is heading toward destruction. They're out, they want something to change with respect. They see a grim horizon. A lot of Israelis do, mostly probably non-settlers for that matter, because settlers pretty much support this extreme cabinet that's in office right now. But is there any hope for them? Why doesn't Netanyahu's cabinet or his Likud party or his government's right now listening to these protesters? Just a couple weeks ago, there's more than 1 million people out there, Scott, but they're not listening one bit. Why?
No, they're not listening one bit, because the Likud party is a fascist, right-wing, fanatical party of genocide, apartheid. It is a ethno-cleansing party. Netanyahu, of course, is the chief among them. They are about exterminating the Palestinians, exterminating the Muslim people in general, exterminating Christians. That's what the Likud party and the Zionists and Netanyahu represent. Netanyahu has in the past said, we are going to collapse the United States of America. He is a disloyal traitor. He stabbed President Trump in the back. So I think the people sense that he is also stabbing them in the back. And they're desperate to stop him at that. And they recognize his ambitions for consolidating tyrannical judicial power will only lead to the death and the enslavement of the Israeli people. It will only lead to war. And I would suspect Netanyahu is desperately going to try and trigger a fight with Iran in order to try and distract his own people to stop protesting against him and unite against a new front, a new war. That's what the Biden administration is trying to do in Ukraine, but that's also failing. And I would say the Chinese recognition of the Palestinian leadership and recognizing and bringing them to China is an enormous positive declaration to the world that the old world of hegemony and imperialism that the United States and Israel embarked on in 2001, those days are at an end, and the future belongs to nations that want to unite in a multipolar world dedicated to peace, sovereignty, economic trade, and flourishing culture, and not dedicated to the principles of slavery and destruction and oppression, which defines the character of Netanyahu, which the Israeli people don't want to define as Israel. Perhaps that's why they're standing up. And their grim reality, their grim perspective to the future is, if Netanyahu is allowed to oppress the Israeli people like this, he will also embark on these other crimes against humanity, such as targeting the Palestinian youth to imprison them as part of a strategy of ethnic cleansing and genocide. There's no one more homicidal and genocidal than Netanyahu and the Likud party. And I think the Israeli people recognize if they don't throw this man out, if they don't end his corrupt career, then Israel itself and all of its people are going to be put into a danger like they've never had before. And their only hope for peace and life is to pursue a different avenue, which is completely the opposite of what Netanyahu represents. But of course, he's a psychopath, so he can't hear, he can't understand. His only advisor and counselor is his reflection in the mirror. But we know how insane those words are.
All right, bud, it's a pleasure. Stay safe. Always good to have you on. Mr. Scott Bennett there joining us from San Francisco, California.